How important are titles? We'll ask the British monarchy and you go and a bunch of other monarchies and you will find out how important is the title of a feature film, of a blockbuster? How important is the title of a book, a bestseller? What makes it so relevant and interesting that people want to dive in and find out more? Well, today we're going to talk about naming your show, not just how do you create good episode titles to pull people into each episode. This is more, what do you call your overall show? And some of you have asked me about it again recently, so I figured I would do a little brush up on this, how to name your show, and what you can do to test and find out the very best results you can get from what title you choose. And stay around for the end. I've got something special for you there. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro, your gateway to becoming a thought leader in your field. Dive into the world of elite podcasting and master the art of influence and inspiration. And now, podcast personality, award-winning author and actress, Anne Scottlin.
You know, Pod News has said from their studies that 70% of listeners click or don't click on your podcast, audio or video, based on the title of your show. We're not even talking about episode titles right now. We're just talking about the name of your show is critically important. And being hokey and cute while having some benefits isn't necessarily the answer. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of that right now. But we really want you to find test this proven strategy that's going to help take your podcast from startup or obscurity to something that people really latch onto and keep coming back to, and something that's easy to share. As you know, I'm Anne Scottlin. I am the Podcast Maestro. I help people produce their podcasts, audio or video. I help host podcasts, audio or video, and we do many other amazing things here. But today, we're uncovering the magic behind this perfect title. So what is it that matters most? I mean, the title of your show is really that first impression that your potential listeners have. It is the very first thing that gives them a clue. Should I click in or should I not? It's the Macy's window, it's the cover, it's the movie poster, it's the thing that makes you decide, I'm not going to watch that. It looks really stupid. Or that book looks really boring. Or, oh my God, I absolutely have to watch that movie. I have to read that book. So it really, really does matter. So let's talk just for a minute about the characteristics of a click-worthy show title. But before we do, please like, subscribe. Do me a favor. Your likes and subscribes always help keep people coming and keep this show on the air. So thank you for that in advance. Or copy and paste this title and shoot it off to somebody else who loves to talk about podcasting, is thought about starting a podcast, or just wants to hang out with us for a few minutes. So clarity over cleverness. This is so important for the name of your show. The name of your show needs to tell your potential listeners exactly what it's about in just a few words. I'm sure you've run across show names that are so long, you only can remember the first or second word, and then it's just hard to even tell people about it. But this is easy to tell people about it. Launch It is the name of the show, my show, and the subtitle is the Podcast Maestro. But Launch It is really clear. You should watch Launch It by Anne Scottlin. She's the Podcast Maestro. So in that main title and subtitle is everything you need to know. Another really short title, not quite as short as Launch It, but is what I talk about often, How I Built This by NPR. So it's immediately clear to the listener, to the viewer, what exactly they can expect. Stories of business success. How I built this. Could it be any clearer? I mean, it could be razzle dazzle do. What the heck is that? So keep it direct and to the point and avoid these overly clever and obscure wording that could really confuse listeners. The other day, my husband was talking to one of my young relatives who was starting a business and said, I want to call it, and he had some clever name. It was really long, by the way. I can't remember what it was. It was something as long as abracadabra do or something. Except it was really academic and kind of cool. And the 3 or 4 syllables together actually meant something. But my husband's like, nobody's going to know what you do in your business. They're going to have absolutely no idea. If they see that on a business card, how are they supposed to know what you do? let alone tell someone about it because they're not going to remember how to say it, let alone spell it if they were going to write it down for someone as a referral. It just doesn't work. You have to keep it simple and you have to really make it clear what your business does. So if your title is overly clever or overly obscure, you could really confuse potential listeners who will be like, yeah, whatever. It's not even a negative that they have. They're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's just a scrolling. You have so little time. You have like, I'm just making this up, but like, you have a 0.1 second before people keep scrolling, right? Do they pause? That's the moment of truth, whether or not they click. So you have that fraction of a second for them to make a decision. And is it something they instantly know what they're going to get or not? Another thing that people sometimes forget about when they pick the title of their show is how searchable it is. Again, not being clever, because no one's searching for a clever title with random and obscure words. They're not putting that in. They're not hashtagging that and searching it. Think about what your ideal viewer or listener is actually typing into the search bar and incorporate key phrases, not that you think your show's about, but that your best potential listener base would use when they're searching. Google says that 60% of podcast listeners discover new shows through search engines. So making SEO-friendly titles is absolutely crucial. Again, what does your target base going to search for? Not what is your show about specifically. Now, do you see how I understand that sounds confusing, but you may say, I feel like my show is about this. And it can be very clear. And sometimes that's enough. But people still may not find you if your show is called How to Buy a House. People know exactly what that means. And they're going to search also real estate, how to buy a house. So maybe your show is How to Buy a House, How to Buy a House. That's long, no longer than that. Subtitle, Real Estate for Beginners or whatever. It needs to say exactly. So the Tim Ferriss Show, for example, is simple. It's searchable. If you know Ferriss' name and that recognition, which is driving credibility, anyone who has a celebrity name can usually use their name for the show. But if you're not a celebrity, then don't just say, Joe Blow Show. Because who knows? Nobody knows who you are, doesn't even search for you. And then also you want to add curiosity though and intrigue. So the best titles are clear, but they also have a sense of mystery and curiosity. So for me, my subtitle, The Podcast Maestro, has a tiny bit of mystery to it. So Launch It, the podcast. That's all they really have to see. So Launch It's the name of the show, subtitle, The Podcast Maestro. The first 4 words they see is Launch It, the podcast. Okay. And if they keep reading, they see the word maestro, which has a little bit of like, what does that actually mean? What's the mystery? Who's waving the magic wand? What is that about? What is the stuff I'm going to learn? So think about adding a little mystery or curiosity if you can, without losing those searchable words for SEO, those searchable hashtags. For example, the podcast Stuff You Should Know. What stuff, right? Stuff you should know. What stuff? Now that could be 2 different ways because it could be considered a little ambiguous, but it also could be intriguing. So at some point, you're going to have to decide between, say, your top 5 show titles. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about how you pick some of the intriguing ones, pick the really clear ones. Often I'll end up mixing and matching to create the perfect one. So hold on and we will talk about that in just a moment. But first, I'm going to take a quick commercial while I am doing that. If you haven't, please please subscribe, drop me a message. My email and website, it should be right here. It's annescottlin.com. You can message me directly. You can email me, contact@annescottlin.com with your podcast questions, and I will be right back.
Picture this. You have worked your whole life to become an expert, a leader, a change maker, but you're so busy, most people will never discover you to recognize your work. Anne Scottlin, founder of Podcast Maestro, understands this challenge. With a decade of Hollywood experience and a proven track record as a business coach, Anne turns seasoned professionals into thought leaders through the art of podcasting. Podcast Maestro offers plug-and-play services, handling everything from pre-production to distribution, so you can focus on your message while Anne and her team manage the rest. Leverage Anne's Hollywood production knowledge, strategic business insight, and social media expertise to amplify your reach and impact. If you're ready to elevate your voice, connect with Anne Scottlin at Podcast Maestro and begin your podcast journey today.
Welcome back to Launch It, the Podcast Maestro. And today we are talking about specifically how to pick the name of your show. Or do you have a show that's not getting a lot of traction and you're considering rebranding it for its, say, second season, for example? You could always use the original title as a subtitle. There's other ways you can kind of seamlessly transition. I'm always happy to talk about that. If you have questions, shoot me your questions via email. But one of the things you want to remember is to creating an emotional response. The power of an emotional response really can't be underestimated. Trigger something positive with that, with either curiosity or humor or a personal connection. So something that really catches people's attention and doesn't seem to make sense. Example, my mom told me to get fat. Well, nothing wrong with any of that, but would you click on that? I would, because I'm like, okay, that sounds incredibly inappropriate. Why would anyone name a show like that? And oh my God, I might have to hear this just so I can send in a criticism. So the absurdity and the humor in the title sparks curiosity. Maybe it's just a cultural thing. Maybe you have no idea what the show is exactly about, but now you're like, I really have to hear this. Again, it's that fine balance, though. This is where it comes into your top 5. Craft your top 5 titles and then mix and match and move things around so that you can have all of these elements. Because in some ways, that title wouldn't tell you exactly what the show is about, but it would definitely pique your interest. So you see how there is a little bit of a balance and a push and pull. FOMO, don't forget, fear of missing out is huge. So titles that really hint that you're exclusive, that you have must-know content can drive listeners to click. In my show, it's in the subtitle, Podcast Maestro. Oh, this is somebody's specialty. This is world class. This is someone who knows what they're doing. This is the expert. Let's listen to this one. So as opposed to Podcasting for Beginners, which is a great title. It's very clear. But if it's just for beginners, they might wonder, what if I'm already a podcaster and I want advanced advice? Or what if I'm looking for someone to produce for me? Is this the kind of person that would be doing that? I'm not a beginner. I want to start mainstream. So there's reasons to test it and see. For example, The Daily, the New York Times, by the New York Times, there's an urgency even in those 2 words, The Daily. Like if you don't hear it today, you won't hear it tomorrow. Like this is today. If you miss it, you're done, unless you have to go back and catch up. Like The Daily, there is something really powerful about that. Numbers and lists can be really helpful. You've all heard this, like 10% happier, or just something that tells you clearly and concisely what the objective of the show is. Feel good right now. I would click on that because I would know that I would come away with an up feeling, a positive story, a feel-good conversation, something that makes me know that life is worth living another day and I can enjoy and appreciate, a sense of humor maybe. This is something that you would click on because even though it has some ambiguity to it, it also is really clear what you're going to come away from. And this should be without saying if you're regularly tuning into the Podcast Maestro, but tailoring your title to the audience, right? So know your niche. I know everyone's so over the word niche. I am sorry. I hate it too. We need new words, people. Please send in your recommended words. I believe in creating new words. I am a wordsmith. Send them in. I'll start using them if I find one that really resonates. But you need to know your niche and understand your audience's interests and needs so it speaks directly to them. So another example to the real estate one before was like the property podcast, right? It tells you probably it's for real estate enthusiasts, as opposed to if you said the culinary podcast or the lumberjacks podcast. Like it's really clear. It is so clear you cannot go wrong. I tuned into a podcast last week, and I'm not going to say what it was called. And the title was completely disorienting. I was really excited about what it looked like it was going to be about. And it turned out to be completely and utterly unrelated to the title. It was so off base. Like I would never, ever listen to it again. I mean, I listened to a little bit and I'm like, what? And then I fast forwarded, I went to the next episode and now still, I was just like, okay, forget it. Like, I don't have the patience for this. Well, keep it professional, of course. So depending on your target audience, you might want to use titles that feel, mine is a little bit formal, mid-road to formal. Launch it, the Podcast Maestro. It's a little bit formal. It's not goofy or silly because that's not exactly who my target audience is. Not that I don't like fun and playful people. It's just that I'm trying to convey a brand of high quality, of world-class production, of excellent hosting. These are the things that I'm conveying, and I want that tone to be reflected in the title of my show. You know, for business-focused podcasts, you want to use those keywords in the name of your show that really instantly convey meaning, like strategy, success, growth, like signal the value to your professional listeners so that they know exactly what they're going to get. And the more specific, the better in many, many cases. I'm going to switch gears now and give you some practical tips for title casting. So if you want to grab a pen and paper or your iPhone notepad or whatever kind of phone you use, I have these friends that are like die-hard other brands, and it's like the brand war. You know, when you try to send someone an iPhone video or photo and it bounces back, or else they get it and the thumbnail is so tiny with like 0 res, they can't even open it, and they're incredibly frustrated. And they're like, well, that's because you're on an iPhone. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just a phone that I ended up with. I'm not an iPhone snob, but seriously, guys. Anyway, okay, I diverge. So some practical tips. You ready? You got your pen, pencil, digital? Okay, here we go. Keep it short and sweet. Like I said before, aim for 4 to 6 words max. Actually, mine fits in there, and that's the title and the subtitle. Let me count. Launch it, the Podcast Maestro. 5 words. Aim for 4 to 6 words max. Titles that are too long are going to get cut off in search results. If you're also airing, if you're video podcasting and you're airing on anything like YouTube, there's only so many letters that are in almost any platform. There's only so many characters permitted in the title before it just disappears. And there's show names. It's bad enough when it's an episode title, but there's show names that do that. And I've seen them scrolling. It's like how to find out the best way to, and you can't see it. And sometimes I click on it, and all I get is an episode, and I still can't see the title because even in there, it's abbreviated. So it's not helpful, right? So use a title testing tool like CoSchedule's Headline Analyzers. That's CoSchedule Headline Analyzer. Use a tool to check out how engaging your title is. I'm giving you free tips here. You're going to find this so helpful. Number 2, use a subtitle for context, as I do. Launch it, the Podcast Maestro. Get your world-class maestro, your world-class podcast off the ground right now. Launch it, and then subtitle, the Podcast Maestro. If your main title is catchy but doesn't explain your podcast, a subtitle can clarify your message. So that is what I hope mine does. Launch it is really specific to the services I offer, which is I launch people's video podcasts for them. From A to Z, everything is done, and I launch it, I carry it, I produce it, the whole thing. They just have to show up and tape. Everything else is done for them, and it's over. Launch it. Get it done already. It's not, my show isn't called Think About for the Next 10 Years How You Might Like to Start a Podcast. Launch it already. I should have just called it Launch It Already. I like that even better. Anyway, so, and then to expand the context, launch it, the Podcast Maestro. It's funny because I guess grammatically it sounds like you're launching the Podcast Maestro, but you know what I mean. At some point, you have to just condense into the best 4 to 6 words that really conveys your meaning so that people don't have any doubt what your podcast is about. Okay, here was something I promised earlier, testing. How do you know what to call your show once you have those, say, 5 top title names that you're thinking about using for the name of your show? As I said, I'll say it one more time, try CoSchedule's Headline Analyzer. That is a great tool. Here's the other thing you should absolutely do that just a tool can't do for you. Listening? A/B testing. If you don't know what that is, it means consider testing different title ideas or any ideas, right? But in this case, title ideas with your target audience on social media and see what resonates most before you commit, before you make a decision. Conduct a quick poll with your email list, your social media following. Ask them to choose between 2 titles. If you take your 5, mix and match, drag those words around, mind map them on a paper if that's what you do, on napkins, I don't care. Mix and match, get those 5 down to 2, then post it to your audience, ask for their advice, their questions, their input. You'll be really surprised. Often I've seen more than one time when the title that 70% of a following picked was not the one that the producer was going to use. So it's really educational right off the bat to do A/B testing. So A versus B, right? All right, well, we're winding up. We're almost to the end here. But last, if not least, know how much your title can change the success or failure of your show. Real life success stories. Example 1, the podcast How to Money was originally called Listen Money Matters. But after they changed the title, How to Money, which again is not grammatically correct, right? But you heard what I said. You have to pack the right words together in the right package to make it catchy. After changing the title to that direct and relatable and intriguing, right? Show title, they had a 25% increase in listenership just from changing the title. The change made that podcast instantly more clickable and accessible to audiences, to their audience. Another show, the birth of Call Me Candid, right? Have you heard that one? So this is hosted by social media influencers, and it was carefully branded to appeal to a young, aspirational audience, right? So the title really combines approachability. Call me. No, I'm not going to sing the song. No, I'm not going to do it. Okay. Call me, maybe. Nope. Oh, okay, I did it. Call me with an emotional promise of honesty. Candid. Call me candid. Also kind of sounds like candy. Like, it's amazing what it will do to your brain, right? Just that title drove massive growth by kind of reflecting that casual, open conversation that listeners really craved. So remember, your title needs to be clear, emotionally engaging, searchable, and really tailored to your niche audience. And don't forget, you can always tweak your title over time as you learn what resonates. You can do A/B podcasting. You can do A/B testing every 6 months, even once your show is on the air, just to make sure that people still love the title. Do A as the current title and B as a potential adaptation of the title and see what people think. Trend words change. So unless you're already a classic veteran in the industry, trend and pop words change constantly. And what was a great show title, even 2 or 3 years later, may no longer be, or may have a connotation based on current events or people or celebrities doing bad things. It may have a connotation that you no longer want. So just keep testing it. And finally, as promised, here's the secret, my final secret to crafting that perfect title. Start by brainstorming, do the 5, and when you have that 5 collection of punchy, curiosity-driven titles, then mix and match. I've already given it to you because I was too excited to save it for the end. Sorry about that. Mix and match, and then do A/B testing. So again, put a whole bunch together, make a long list, reduce it to 5, mix and match from those 5, create 2, do A/B testing with your social media audience or email list or both or everyone you know, and there you have a title. Now it's your turn. Go out, try these time-tested techniques. Really test these titles with your audience. I would love to hear what your titles are, what you're thinking of calling your show, and what your A/B choice was to test your audience with. Would love to hear your story. Feel free to send it to me in an audio message, a video, an email. You can reach out to me directly on my website, which is annescottlin.com. If you're listening and not watching today, my name is spelled ANNE. SCOTTLIN, not the country, LIN. AnneScottlin.com. You can email me, same place, contact at Anne Scottlin. No, don't do that. Contact at AnneScottlin.com. And if you'd like help getting your podcast off the ground and being a world-class success right out of the gate, let me know. I have more and more tools to help you. I also do co-hosting for people's first season. I also do full producing from A to Z. So reach out to me again on the website or email annescottlin.com. Keep me posted. I love to hear from all of you. Shoot in your suggestions, your requests, topics you love, or even guests that you would like to have on the show. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.